Credited as being one of the first modern-day sightings of unidentified flying objects, the story of Kenneth Arnold appears to be one of the most well-known and highly debated encounters of the 1940s, featuring possible extraterrestrial intervention and government cover-up conspiracies. According to the report, Kenneth Arnold claimed that on the 24th of June, he had been flying in a private charter plane that he was piloting himself from Chehalis, Washington, on his way to Yakima, Washington, for a business trip. As he was flying, he made a small detour over the region of Mount Rainier, in the hopes of possibly spotting a downed US Marine Corps C-46 transport plane that had reportedly crashed near the base of the mountain and was announced to have had a $5,000 reward to anyone who could supply the US military with sufficient information to help locate the downed aircraft. At about 3 p.m., Arnold gave up the search and rerouted his flight path eastward to head towards Yakima. It was around this time that he noticed what he described as a bright flashing light that was similar to a ray of sunlight reflecting off a mirror and hitting his face. Roughly 30 seconds following the flash of light, Arnold claimed to see a series of bright flashes that were hovering north of Mount Rainier, believed to have been about 20 to 25 miles to his left. Unsure of the type of craft that could have been responsible for the flashing lights, he quickly began rotating his craft, moving his plane side to side and removing his eyeglasses. This was to make sure that the bright flashing lights were not some form of sunlight reflection that was catching his eyewear at an awkward angle. Sufficiently convinced that the flashing lights were not sunlight reflections, Arnold began watching the strange lights move across at incredibly fast speeds, of which he estimated to be about 1,200 miles per hour while maneuvering in flipping patterns similar to bird-like aerial flight. Believing that the craft could have been a new type of experimental jet, he paid special attention to the shape of the craft in an attempt to learn what type of model the experimental military craft could have been based off of, but found that they appeared to have been saucer-shaped with one large craft at the center that was described as crescent-shaped. Although the event was dismissed by Air Force intelligence officers as being nothing more than a mirage, Kenneth Arnold would eventually be validated through the assistance of corroborating witness testimony from a man by the name of Fred Johnson. According to Fred Johnson, who worked as a prospector on Mount Adams, Johnson wrote to AAF Intelligence that he viewed 6 objects on the 24th of June around the same time that Kenneth Arnold encountered the 9 bright flashing lights that he described were round and tapered to a point in the head that formed into an oval shape. As he viewed the craft passing over the area through a small telescope, he noted that the strange craft appeared to affect his compass in ways commonly seen when around the compass was placed a round magnetized rock, pointing evidence towards impossible to explain electromagnetic properties. When media outlets questioned Kenneth Arnold further on the behavior of the craft he had witnessed, he had remarked that their flight patterns looked similar to saucers skipping on the surface of the water, a phrase that would later be used to coin the now famous term flying saucers for extraterrestrial craft. Today, the theories that Kenneth Arnold had seen an early iteration of the modern-day stealth bomber have been at the center of skeptics' debunking of the event. However, Kenneth Arnold clarifies that the shape of the craft were more akin to sightings of traditional UFO encounters and demonstrated strange flipping behaviors that could not be replicated with stealth bombing craft, even in the modern day. Inspired by his sighting, Kenneth Arnold would go on to document and investigate future cases of UFO encounters, which would lead him to the strange government cover-up of the Maury Island incident. Located in the Bay of Washington State, a small island has become the center of a number of UFO sightings and Men in Black theories that were originally reported to have occurred on the island during the late 1940s. According to reports gathered together by Kenneth Arnold on the 21st of June during 1947, Fred Chrisman and Harold Dahl witnessed what the 2 men described as 6 donut-shaped aircraft floating in the sky above their patrol boat. After an unknown period of time of watching the individual craft, the men claimed that one of the donut ships dropped what was described as white lava that landed on the patrol boat. After hitting a co-worker's arm, leaving him injured, as well as the onboard dog, The team returned to the shore to work out what had just happened and report the incident to higher channels. It was during this time that Kenneth Arnold, an airplane pilot and flight enthusiast, claimed to have encountered several unidentified flying objects in and around the same area that Fred Chrisman and Harold Dahl had witnessed their event. After Fred Chrisman and Harold Dahl reported the strange event, Dahl claimed that he had been visited by a man in a dark suit, who warned him not to talk about the unidentified flying object incident with anyone. Otherwise, there would be serious repercussions for all of the parties involved with the encounter. This would eventually lead to general reluctance on the part of Harold Dahl when confronted on the incident, and during a follow-up investigation by the FBI, Dahl would later claim that the entire event was nothing more than a hoax in an effort to distance himself from the event. The FBI investigative report would later quote, "If questioned by the authorities, he was going to say it was a hoax because he did not want any further trouble over the matter." Fred Chrisman, however, continued with his claims that the entire story was completely legitimate. Oddly enough, after several news outlets had picked up their story, private sources would later come forward and claim that Fred Chrisman and Harold Dahl had never been boat patrolmen anywhere near Maury Island where the incident had taken place, despite the vehement claims from Chrisman and Dahl that they were being discredited as a part of some sort of cover-up scheme perpetrated by unknown forces. The general public began to believe that the entire incident was nothing more than an elaborate hoax done for an eventual book deal with a fantasy magazine. Kenneth Arnold, who retrieved the white metal from Fred Chrisman and Harold Dahl, continued to pursue the case on his own and contacted 2 retired Air Force intelligence officers to look over the metal and to prove definitively that it was evidence of an advanced piece of extraterrestrial alloy. Although their findings at the time were inconclusive, the 2 Air Force officers assured Arnold that they would soon get back to him at a later time. After boarding their North American B-25 Mitchell aircraft, however, the Air Force pilots suffered major equipment malfunction and passed away on their trip back to California. But what do you make of this mysterious story? Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comment section below and help us to grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.